For months, some of the people shopping for stolen identities online may have been browsing a cybercrime market that was already in the FBI's hands. Not shut down, not gone, still there. Still open, still taking clicks. And that is what makes the Genesis market takedown so unsettling. According to court records and U.S. Justice Department statements, investigators didn't just seize a criminal storefront tied to stolen identities and access logs. They moved inside it. They watched. And then, bit by bit, they started unmasking the people who came shopping. If you like seeing how cybercrime cases actually unfold from indictments and affidavits, subscribe. This channel follows the paperwork, not just the headlines. Genesis Market was not a normal leak site. It was a store for digital lives. Investigators described a platform selling credentials, browser fingerprints, session cookies, and device data, harvested by malware from infected computers around the world. In plain English, not just usernames and passwords, but pieces of identity that could help a buyer look like the victim online. And that detail matters, because this case is not only about stolen data. My view is that Genesis represented something colder, the industrial packaging of trust itself. A login is one thing. A ready-made identity kit is something else entirely. The public phase of the operation came in April 2023, when an international law enforcement action known as Operation Cookie Monster targeted Genesis Market. The DOJ said 119 people were arrested worldwide, and the FBI's Houston field office described a coordinated move against the platform's infrastructure and users. But the story didn't end with the seizure banner. That's where it got more interesting. Court filings later described the undercover inversion at the heart of the case. After gaining control of parts of the infrastructure, the FBI was able to operate in an undercover capacity on the market. Think about how strange that is. A crime scene that stays open. A storefront that becomes surveillance. A place built to hide people, turning into the place that exposes them. When I read through the charging documents, one thing stayed with me. The investigators were not chasing a single dramatic mastermind in a hoodie. They were mapping an ecosystem. Sellers, buyers, infrastructure, malware logs, payments, repeated behavior. Cybercrime at scale rarely looks like genius. It looks like supply chains. Genesis Market's own alleged business model made that possible. The DOJ and FBI described a platform where infected victims' data was organized into so-called bots, listings tied to compromised machines. Buyers could search those listings and purchase access packages. Again, not a tutorial, just the shape of the market. Stolen access, sorted, indexed, and sold like inventory. That is the real thesis of this case. Genesis Market allegedly turned identity theft into retail, and law enforcement answered by turning retail back into a trap. It's a rare moment where the architecture of the crime becomes the architecture of the investigation. And ask yourself this: if a criminal market is built around convenience, what happens when convenience becomes the thing that catches you? How many buyers came back because the site still looked familiar? How many assumed the invisible layer beneath the page had not changed? According to affidavits and DOJ releases, investigators monitored activity tied to users who returned to the platform after the takedown phase. In some cases, that helped connect online personas to real-world identities. Not all at once, not with movie-style magic, with patient correlation. Dates, logins, accounts, repetition. So let me ask you, what was the bigger mistake here? Building a market around stolen identities? Or believing a familiar interface meant it was still safe to use? Drop your answer in the comments. Then came 2024, and the story tightened. Federal prosecutors in Wisconsin unsealed cases tied to alleged Genesis Market users, including people accused of buying access to victim identities through the platform. One of those public examples was described by the DOJ as a man charged after allegedly purchasing Genesis credentials linked to bank and other online accounts. The names matter in court. The pattern matters for the rest of us, engaged. Because every bot on that market started with a real person on the other end. A laptop infected, a browser hijacked, a bank session exposed. Maybe a small business owner, maybe a retiree, maybe somebody who never understood why their account started acting strangely. Cybercrime reporting often gets abstract fast. Victims become numbers. In cases like this, that is a mistake. What impresses me most is how ordinary the damage can look at first. An account lockout, a fraud alert, a card charge. Then you realize the victim was not just robbed. Their digital body had been copied, packaged, and put on a shelf. Security researchers had warned for years that Genesis was a major enabler of account takeover fraud because of how much context it offered around a victim's online identity. That context is what lowers friction for criminals. And that is the deeper insight here. The weakest point is not always a breached password. Sometimes it is the entire convenience layer wrapped around a person's digital life. But here is the turn that makes this case feel almost surreal. The market was useful to criminals for the same reason it became useful to investigators. Repeat traffic, habit, returning customers. In old organized crime, a fence disappears when the police close in. In this case, according to the government's account, the storefront itself kept helping identify the people who trusted it. Oh, that inversion is chilling. Whispering. Imagine walking into a store for contraband, only the cashier is gone, the cameras are live, and the ledger is now evidence. That is not just a takedown. That is a psychological ambush built from the criminal platform's own design. Public reporting from outlets including Krebs on Security and official DOJ statements helped fill in what happened around the operation. Domains seized, seizure notices posted, and follow-on investigations continuing after the headlines moved on. That last part matters. The public thinks the big moment is the raid. In cybercrime, the quieter phase after the raid is often where identities get attached to keyboards. And I think that is the lesson most headlines missed. This was not only a story about shutting down a market. It was a story about patience, about letting the shape of a criminal service reveal the people who depended on it, about using familiarity against the very users who trusted anonymity for protection. If that twist hit you the way it hit me when I dug through the case files, leave a like, because this case deserves far more attention than the one-day headlines it got. The legacy is still unfolding. Genesis Market was one of the clearest examples of cybercrime becoming organized retail. Packaged access, searchable victims, friction removed for buyers. Law enforcement's response showed something equally important. Modern digital investigations are no longer just about breaking doors. Sometimes they are about inheriting the door, repainting the sign, and waiting to see who walks in. There is also a hard policy question sitting underneath all this. How much should the public know in real time when investigators are operating inside criminal infrastructure? Too much disclosure can burn the operation. Too little can make the story sound cleaner than it really was. That tension is part of modern policing now, especially online. And maybe the darkest part of Genesis is this. The market did not sell some exotic cyber weapon. It sold proximity to ordinary people's lives. Their sessions, their habits, their routines, their digital residue. The crime was intimate, even when the interface looked clinical. So when people say cybercrime is abstract, I think of cases like this and disagree. There is nothing abstract about someone packaging a person's online identity and handing it to a stranger. There is nothing abstract about investigators quietly stepping behind the counter and turning that machine back on itself. If true crime tech fascinates you, subscribe and join me here, because the next case goes even deeper into how investigators turn criminal infrastructure into evidence. A market for stolen lives. Then a market run for a time by the people hunting its customers. That is the Genesis Market story, and it should make anyone with an online account a little less comfortable tonight.